Welcome to Two Travel Dads Podcast. Here we share our favorite destinations, travel tips, stories from our adventures, and bring on awesome guests to share insights into their travelsome lives. Be sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and check out our detailed show notes at twotraveldads.com/podcast-episodes. Welcome back to another episode of Two Travel Dads Podcast featuring, well, let me ask you this.
Let me ask you this.
Starring myself, Rob, and
Kate Batzel.
Woohoo! I've really been enjoying recording these episodes with you because they're so different than when we actually sit down with like a schedule of what we want to talk about.
I hope that people are just enjoying our random brain ramblings.
It's if you're listening, I hope it feels like you're eavesdropping and you feel special.
Yeah.
Good times.
Or that you're part of the conversation.
Yeah. So with that, today's Let Me Ask You This is about pandemic/post-pandemic life and travel and how we feel about it. So, I know that sounds very loose and open, but
that's how we like it. We love it loose and open.
I don't remember where I was going with that.
This is very distracting.
Anyways, let's talk about that. So,
okay, great. Post-pandemic travel
yeah.
or during pandemic lack of travel.
I know. So, and right now, as we're seeing a surge in COVID in different places again.
Ew, no, that's not okay.
I know, but you know what? It's on the news. It is what it is.
Oy.
So, with that, pandemic hits. I'm going to talk about this first because I worked in travel.
Yeah.
And still work in travel.
You are the person for this question.
And literally, here's the story of me learning about COVID. Once upon a time, I am at Disneyland with my family and actually several other people who work in travel, other travel bloggers, and we were all hanging out in California Adventure. Podcast episode about that. And we were just chatting, and one of my friends, Kim, she said, "Hey, have you guys heard about this like COVID thing?" It was something on the news because, you know, at the time we lived in Seattle and she also lived in Seattle. And so that's where, for the US, that's where it really kind of started. And none of us really heard anything about it. And we're like, oh, that sounds kind of weird. Whatever, let's go have fun. And we went and had fun. And then we flew home on March 1st, which I was talking to the kids about this actually last night, that it was the scariest flight of my life. And I actually thought that we were going to die as we rapidly descended 20,000 feet due to the most violent turbulence I've ever experienced.
Oh my goodness.
It was horrifying. And Elliot and I were sitting kind of like middle of the plane, and then Chris and Oliver were like 6-7 rows in front of us. Like we weren't even all sitting together.
Oh my gosh.
And the plane was just like going up and down, and there was flight attendants buckled into seats in the middle of the cabin because they couldn't even make it back to the back of the plane. Like, it was so intense.
Oh, wow. For the nervous traveler, that is not the norm.
It is not the norm, and I've never even experienced anything else even remotely reminiscent of a single moment of that flight. It was terrifying.
Yeah, that's bananas.
It was bizarre. Anyways, so that was our flight coming home from that last trip before the pandemic. And we got home, and literally the next day is when the news started to flare up, and we watched the world shut down. For me, something that was really big that happened is as they started to announce, you know, lockdown, social distancing, things like that, I all of a sudden saw my workload just disappear. And I had about an hour and a half time in this one afternoon, I think it was March 14th or 15th or so, where I received email after email canceling work projects that were already contracted. And in an hour and a half, I lost $55,000 worth of work.
Oh my gosh.
It was, literally, it was stuff that was already booked and scheduled, all of this happening. And all of a sudden, my business just vanished in an afternoon.
That must have felt very world endy.
It was bizarre. It's really weird to think about now because now life is basically back to normal. But it was really weird and mortifying. So with that, I mean, then we did our move across the country during the pandemic in our camper. Got a podcast episode about that too. And we landed here in Florida where the beach was closed.
Yeah.
And it was not quite like it was in Washington as far as pandemic goes, but it was pretty intense still. And we definitely weren't going anywhere. So that was my like pandemic transition into the life of let me just go kayaking and get really good at taking my kids to the beach.
Yeah.
What happened for you when everything kind of kicked in 4 years ago?
So weirdly, as you were telling the story, I was like, oh, weird. We were both on like trips when it kind of happened.
Oh, that's right, because you were traveling too.
And so was my husband. And my husband was where you lived at the time. He was in Seattle and he was coming home from a work trip. And it was like the 3rd of March or whatever. He was going to be home. And I was leaving for a cruise. Yes, a cruise. And we all know what happened with that. I was going on a 3 or 4 day cruise. And so I was watching the news and like texting him, and he's calling me and going, oh my gosh, like, you know, there's like this thing is happening in Seattle where I am. And I don't he was supposed to go back out for like 6 more weeks or whatever. And they were like, yeah, no, nobody's coming back. So I basically like texted him and I was like, please come home and burn all your clothes when you arrive and like shower in acid or whatever you need to do. And then I got on a cruise ship. And of course, at that point, we didn't know that cruise ships were going to be like a cesspool. So we got on a cruise ship where I did not have any internet or cell service for 3 days. And then we got off the cruise ship, and it was me and 4 of my girlfriends. We got off the cruise ship. And of course, then our cell service kicks back in, and it's just, our phones just blew up with all of this, you know, oh my gosh, the world is ending. Yada, yada, yada. So it was really crazy. And I was like, wait, what happened? We were all just like la-di-da on the cruise. Everything was fine. Went to the Bahamas. It was lovely. And then turns out the pandemic had spread at that point. It's like it was here.
Wow.
So yeah, it was kind of crazy. And then, yeah, again, it was no traveling for anybody we didn't even go to Pennsylvania to visit parents. We didn't, do any of that stuff. So
yeah, gosh,
we camped in our driveway.
Isn't it weird that was 4 years ago now?
I can't, it's bananas. But yeah. I feel like the pandemic now is very much like the 9/11, like where were you when, you know? Mm-hmm. So it is very kind of interesting that we've gone through these kind of global situations, catastrophes, whatever you want to call them.
Which, by the way, on 9/11, I was one of the openers for my Starbucks store in Ballard, the 3294.
Oh.
Shout out.
We're not doing shout outs anymore.
And that was also fascinating because that was before I had a cell phone, and before there was internet absolutely everywhere, and all the information that was coming into my little cafe at 6 o'clock in the morning was bizarre, and it was just putting together these weird pieces and stories. And then all of a sudden, like, we were shutting down our Starbucks, and there was like corporate people standing outside giving out drink coupons, and we're like, what is happening to the world? And then my grandma called the store in a panic.
Yeah, that's really funny because you probably worked in a store where you couldn't turn, you didn't have a radio. You're just listening to like the music that's playing in the store.
Yep.
And I was in the same situation because
music is what it was.
I was at American Eagle Outfitters in the King of Prussia Mall. If you listen to our last episode, you'll know about King of Prussia. Anyway, and again, we didn't have a radio. We were like running down. There was an NBC 10 store down like a couple
like
stores
a Hudson
from us.
News?
Kinda. NBC 10 is big in Philly. And so we were like running down to like watch it was like 2 of us that had just opened the store, and we were running down to watch the news and see what was going on, and then coming back to tell the other one, and then the other one would run down.
So wild.
This became a where were you when?
Yeah. It really, yeah. We don't need to talk about the Berlin Wall today, but I remember that too.
That was in the 80s.
I know. Do you not remember that?
I mean, I remember like David Hasselhoff or something. Did he do something?
I don't know. Anyway, so back to the pandemic.
Is he there? I don't know.
So for us, our first kind of thing that kind of felt, I don't want to say normal because it was really weird. The first kind of travel-y sort of thing that we did once the pandemic hit was Disney World invited us to come and like see what Disney was like, fully masked and like managing social distancing and all that. And it was the strangest experience because it was such tight I guess, security, you would say, about how everything happened, and everything was sanitized, and there would be just your own immediate family in a ride vehicle, and there was nobody in the parks. It was fascinating.
This is very weird. This aligns too well. This is like do kind of weird.
Okay.
Because our first thing that we did after everything started to like restrictions started to let up was go to Disney.
Oh.
But doing it in Orlando.
Yeah.
Because
Well, no, exactly. We were in Orlando too.
We still had time on our passes, and we had to use it because we had like another month left or whatever, and we had to use it when they reopened. So we went. And so what was were you like, this is awesome because there's nobody here, or were you like, this is weird and creeping me out?
It was kind of a little bit of both, because there were no lines, no wait, no anything like that. But then also, Disney's, a happy place, and all of our photos are
Have
stifled.
masks in
We all
them.
have masks,
Yeah.
but I mean, they're awesome masks, like Goofy, Donald Duck, Stitch, things like that, like character faces.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like, they say you smile with your eyes. I'm sorry, no.
You smile.
All of those
It's my thing.
photos all those photos with us at Disney World in the Magic Kingdom wearing masks, you can tell
They're not framers.
they're not.
You're not
framers.
framing those bad
No.
boys. I know.
No, and it's funny because like I've been like going through and like updating old blog posts about Disney, and I'm finding so many pictures that I added from like during peak COVID, and yeah, we're having fun. We're at Magic Kingdom, but also like you can see the darkness around the edge of my mask from the sweat
Right.
that it had started absorbing.
Yep.
And like just really weird little nuanced things like that were a part of the experience. Like, yay, we got to go while other people were still like extremely locked down because they were immunocompromised, or they lived in a place where they couldn't go to a really distant theme park.
Yeah.
It was very different for us.
Yeah, there were a lot of cities that were really, hardcore lockdown. What's funny is, so my husband thought that Disney during the pandemic was like the best Disney ever because he does not like crowds. And he does not was not a huge fan of wearing a mask in the hot, right? But he was like, I would do this all day long if I could just, like, he loved having tables that were like 10 feet apart. And, he's like, you're not right on top of people.
Yeah,
It's great.
yeah.
This is fantastic. So
Well-
his dream Disney is a pandemic Disney.
Well, and then Universal was the same.
Yeah.
And then, I actually wrote a lot about that, about kind of what the difference was and how they were managing them. And it was very, very different. And yeah.
Yeah, it's funny. I look back at pictures because we went to California in 2021 in February. And restrictions in California had not really been lifted much. And we were in San Francisco. We were in Los Angeles. And I was looking back at pictures that I actually wanted to get framed of our trip. And a lot of the pictures, the kids are wearing masks. And I'm like, but this was a part of our life. And what's funny is even their school pictures, I actually had them wear masks in their school pictures.
Oh.
Because when you look back at like your kids' school pictures, you're looking year after year after year. I wanted to like be like, this was the pandemic year. Because it is a historical event. So like they're going, when they have kids and their grandkids and stuff, they're going to look back and be like, yeah, that was back during the COVID times, So I don't know how I had to say that in old grandpa voice.
Well, so no, because one of the things I love to say, and I say this to Reed often, her son, is like he'll tell a story about something, and once he's done, I'll say, "That's a good story, Grandpa," and
Because he does tell stories like a grandpa.
totally. But like when we talk about this to our grandkids someday, they're gonna be like, "Oh, that's a good story,
Yeah.
Grandpa."
So it is really interesting, but like I also like the document, like having it all documented is really kind of an important, piece of human history. So
Yeah, it is, and it's also this was kind of the first like worldwide event where social media was around.
Yeah.
Which also made it more complex because you got such contrasting information, misinformation, opinions from people who all of a sudden had a platform to talk about things they didn't know anything about, but also everybody documenting how it was like daily life. And that wasn't something that had been done for 9/11. Or,
that's true. That is true. Yeah.
Or Desert Storm or things like that.
9/11, it was, even though there were people that had documented it, you didn't get it right away. You were getting it later. And
When you bought the Time magazine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We had a friend that lived in Brooklyn, so he was an art student and had been filming on the Brooklyn Bridge when it happened.
Oh, wow.
And we got to see his footage, but it was insane. But I guess, they had, when the first tower got hit, they had the news there, and then of course they got to see it all unfold on camera, but it wasn't, it's weird to think that there wasn't really social media back then.
Yeah.
It doesn't seem like that long ago, but I guess it was.
Yeah, like, and when you look at things from 9/11, it looks historic.
Yeah.
Like, it's got a certain quality to it. It has that film quality to it, and it makes it so that it seems like almost kind of detached, even though we can remember exactly.
It's got VHS tape quality.
Yeah, and so when you look at it, it kind of jogs memories
Yeah.
and puts that filter on it. Versus now, like, I look at pictures of us in our camper or pictures that were like taken of me filling up our gas tank when we were driving across the country, and I'm wearing a mask outside, wearing plastic gloves at an empty gas station in the desert. Like,
yeah, that's crazy. That is very like apocalyptic kind of feel.
It's very strange.
It's really weird.
But it's also like it has a quality of the now versus the nostalgic quality of thinking back and seeing like 9/11 photos. It's just a totally different way of looking at it.
I know, boy, a walk down memory lane for everyone.
I didn't know
today.
this is where this was going.
I didn't either, but I'm really glad we're all here for it.
Yeah.
Good job, everyone. Well, let me ask you this.
Okay.
What made you decide during the pandemic to up and leave the west side of the country and move to the east side of the country?
Because pre-pandemic, we were already in the process.
Okay, well, fair.
Yeah, no, we were already in the process of like moving and selling our house, and we already had an offer on a house here and had gone through inspection and done all that, and we
You were pretty much committed. You were like, this is happening.
But like we also had done it with a really long, like a 60-day close, so that we could you really button things up, and then everything happened, and then all of a sudden we had to put our house on the market 2 days later. And the real estate agent here was like, if you want to have this house, you need to close on this now before they don't let you. And it was all very doomsday, which is why when all that happened, all of a sudden a week later, we had a moving truck booked and we had bought a camper and we couldn't have hotel reservations anywhere. So we had to camp our way across the country to be able to move. Like, it was very swift. Had we not been in process, I'm sure we would have stayed.
Wow.
And then we would not be here today. But thankfully, we had already done that. And thankfully, our real estate agent made us panic about it.
Yeah, well, I think everybody was panicking because it was all panic, no disco. You know what I mean?
Yes,
Truly.
exactly. And then everything happened with the 2020 election, which
I forgot about that
I
one.
know, right? That was a part of this collective trauma.
Oh.
And that was, different panic, same disco.
Yeah.
So
Now we're up again. Woohoo!
new disco.
We're gonna redo everything.
More niche panic now.
Okay, fair.
Yeah. Depending on who you are.
Interesting. Do you feel like, well, okay, so let me ask you this. Do you feel like there are still because you're booking travel for a living, do you feel like there are still a lot of restrictions in different places, I know when we were looking at our trip to the UK, we were like, okay, well, we're leaving the United States. Are we going to have to wear masks in place? Like, what's going on over there? You kind of have to check the websites and do all the things. And
yeah. So I haven't come across anything that is specifically like that currently.
Okay.
But to be honest, when we flew to Hawaii last month, I wore a mask on the plane. So
Yeah.
We had our masks because no matter what you're used to now in daily life, for me, I still remember the flights that I did have to take when it was still when there would be 15 people on a plane and you had to wear a mask and you had to wipe down your entire section. It still is a part of this is a part of the flying process.
Yeah.
And so even though it's not required anymore, so actually it was funny. I was at a conference in Washington State when the FAA removed the mask restriction.
oh, wow.
And it happened, or I was on my way to Washington. It happened midair.
Oh, wow. Did they make an announcement?
They made an announcement because people were on, like, you have internet on the airplane now.
Sure.
People were on their phones, and somebody on my plane was like, we don't have to wear masks anymore, everyone.
Oh, wow.
And
that's so weird and
it
random.
was bizarre because then you hear just this hubbub, and then the flight attendant came on and said, we would like to let you know that the FAA has removed this restriction. We will be continuing to wear ours during the flight. If you choose to remove your mask, that is a personal decision. Like, it was very weird. And also at that time, like, I was still kind of in that mode of, oh, and had I known that was going to happen, I think I still felt trepidatious enough about everything that I might not have flown.
Yeah.
And then got to my conference and I'm still wearing a mask and everybody's like, oh, you don't have to anymore. Even the FAA says so. And
you're like, yeah, but people are gross. And that was like the guy that was coughing on me in my flight.
Yeah. So it was very strange.
Honestly,
there's another where were you moment. Where were you the moment the FAA
I
lifted
don't
the
even know. I didn't
restrictions?
even know it happened, like when it happened. But I think that, being on an airplane is a germy place anyway. And so for me, I would rather not get, like, I'm not a germaphobe, but I'm also like not a person who likes disgustingness. So so
you're normal.
I mean, I don't know that I'm normal. I feel like I'm a little bit over the top, but when we get on a plane, I like wet wipe everything down with like Lysol wipes because, like, have you ever seen the videos of when they go with the black light? People don't watch the video. Just wipe down your stuff. Seriously. But I'm also the person that gets sick really, really easily. And like, I always get whatever the guy sitting next to me has. And then I go on a trip and then I'm miserable for my
Your
trip.
whole life
because
is I'll have what he's having.
Yes, pretty much. And so I don't want to go, I don't want to pay all this money to go to Hawaii or something and then be like sick with the stomach bug the whole time we're there. My husband, when we went to St. Thomas, he got a stomach bug and was quite literally in our hotel room for almost the entire trip. And meanwhile, I'm like, I'm going to the pool. But I felt bad for him. But I'm like, listen, we paid a lot of money for this trip. So somebody's going to enjoy it. But
So I have a story.
okay, great.
It's relating to that.
Okay, great.
And it's relating to making poor decisions about flying while sick.
Okay.
So-
Poor decisions. Okay.
So, once upon a time, 2009. Who remembers 2009? Do you remember what happened in 2009?
No.
The swine flu.
Oh, good grief.
Do you remember the swine flu?
There was bird flu. There was swine flu.
I
There's been
know.
all kinds of animal
Did you get the swine
related.
flu?
I don't know.
We got the swine flu
Oh, wonderful.
while we were in Mexico.
Ooh.
Like, it was mortifying. It was the worst trip ever. We had coordinated this big trip to Cabo with friends and family. In total, there were 15 of us.
Oh, wow.
It was bonkers.
Did everyone get the swine flu?
Half of us got the swine flu.
Ooh, ew.
But so half of us were kind of locked in our rooms, dripping sweat, vomiting.
Oh, lovely.
And then Hurricane Patricia hit Cabo at the same time. So we're like with swine flu, a
God.
huge group of people. There's a hurricane to blow in.
Everyone's dying. Hurricanes are
yeah.
blowing.
But so then, then we're, it's time to go home. And it's not like we could just stay in Mexico with swine flu. We didn't have a place to stay. This is also 2009, so it was a different world. So we got to the airport, and we flew through Salt Lake City, and there were signs all over the airport that said, if you see anyone with these symptoms, please alert authorities.
No way. Run
and literally, we're like
Oh,
going through the
no.
airport, like with this like off-white colored skin, with
Oh my-
like sunburnt cheeks, sweating, like trying to be
Oh my God, you're like an
inconspicuous.
Ebola monkey.
And we got home, but oh man, then once we were home, we were sick for another 4 days. I remember one point like laying on the bathroom floor, naked, throwing up, sweating.
Gross.
It was
All the more reason to
terrible.
wipe down your trays. Please wipe down
Exactly.
your trays.
And so the point of that story is that yes, wipe down your airline
Just take
seats because you don't know who's
you
flying.
might seem like a crazy, well, that is the thing too, right? Like I'm not going to shame anybody who booked a flight, paid, some ridiculous amount of money for tickets on an airplane. It's expensive. And trying to get it rescheduled is a nightmare. So if you get sick on your trip, you're just in it to win it, and you gotta go.
But then you also need to extend the courtesy to other people of managing yourself and keeping your germs to yourself as
Yeah.
best as possible.
Don't puke on your friends in the seat next to you.
Yeah.
However, but I think that people need to be aware, like, I think we only think in our own kind of little world. Be aware that there's going to be sick people on your plane. So, I highly recommend doubling up on your vitamin C and your zinc and all that stuff too.
And we actually have a podcast episode about that too.
I know. I listened to it before I went to the UK. 8 hours on a plane. I was not going to mess around.
Yeah, but so, I mean, with the pandemic coming in and like travel kicking back up, I think it's something we're always going to kind of think about, even if we don't think, I remember the pandemic and now I need to be cautious of this and this. I think it's something that we're just now going to have it ingrained, that there's these little nuanced behaviors or discomforts with different things as we proceed in life. Like, it's just, now it's a part of our collective experience and collective trauma.
I hope that minimally people are just washing their hands more. That's my wish for all of it.
That is a great wish, for sure. Going from there, though, working in travel, I see where travel is today, and I don't feel like it has recovered to what it was before the pandemic.
Right.
Even though travel is kind of at a peak, I think travel now is different.
In what way? What do you mean?
So I think that before the pandemic, people would take trips, take vacations or whatever, and it was just like kind of a normal thing. If you got to do something cool, you got to do something cool. I think that now people are being much more intentional about the things that they do and really gunning for those outdoor adventure sort of trips.
Interesting.
And national parks. National parks saw huge soaring numbers since the pandemic.
Well, you can be outside.
Exactly.
It's always nice.
You can be outside. You can socially distance, all that stuff. That's a phrase that I haven't heard.
I know, right?
Social distancing.
It's my husband's dream scenario. He wants everyone to social distance.
I mean, I want that in general too, but no. So with that though, like with people traveling again now, it's not just that they're starting to travel more. It's that they're doing new and
they're
different
going
things.
to different places than they would have before.
And people,
do you feel like it's more, they're trying to do like more bucket listy kind of like,
absolutely,
this is a now or never kind of deal?
More bucket listy. And like talking with my friends and family who don't work in travel, they also are doing the more bucket listy, maybe fancier sorts of things or more bespoke sort of experiences, because I don't know if maybe it is something of, who knows if we're going to get locked down again, or maybe it's climate change is so bad. Who knows when somebody's going to give up and then we're all going to be gone. There's something going on that has made it so that people are much more active in pursuing really unique and fun, different things than before. Like, it's not just people booking a trip to Disneyland during summer break.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that we definitely got way more. I mean, we booked the trip to California, and
which for other people
like
that
huge.
might not seem.
Yeah, I know. Everybody else is like, who cares, California?
But when you're an East Coaster, that's a big trip.
Also, it's a big trip for Kate Batzel because she doesn't go anywhere. Like before that, she had never been west of the Mississippi. And she is, for some reason, speaking in third person.
I was just going to call it out because you say you don't do it, but you do it.
Oh, I hate that. But for me, that was like a huge deal. I had never been to the Grand Canyon. We went to Arizona first. We went to see the Grand Canyon.
I'm going to the Grand Canyon next week.
So you're so privileged. And so, but I mean, I think that was very, kind of like I had always wanted to go to San Francisco and see the sea lions on the things. And
Pier 39.
Yeah, there were like 5 sea lions, you guys. It was really sad, actually. But, that was like a really big bucket list kind of trip. And we booked it because we were like, oh my gosh, we haven't gone anywhere in how many, a year or two. Yeah. And we were kind of over it.
Yeah.
And my husband hasn't traveled for work since. Well, he did. He went to Orlando, but that's not.
Yeah, that's not
travel.
That's not travel. But no, I think that is the perfect example of, changing how you would normally operate throughout a year. Now that we've gone through this, is like intentionally going and doing something like that, whether it seems big or small to somebody else, who cares? That is a huge thing for your family. For us, gosh.
Yeah, I wonder if listeners are traveling more or going to bigger and more exotic places.
I would love to have some info from people about that. Like if you want to jump on wherever you get your podcasts or jump on social and leave a comment somewhere about what your travel MO is these days, I would love to hear that because I only know what's in my travel circle and my family and friends.
And where they're going or where they're planning on going.
Yeah.
Or if they're making less plans and just holing up in their house, maybe. I don't know.
Or becoming professional local campers, which is also fine.
That's another podcast. I don't even know what that is. It's so beyond me.
Oh, good times. I think this was a great little chat that we had.
We always have great little
And it was
chats.
unplanned.
Thanks for letting us in your ears.
Yeah, this was great. If you enjoyed us, go ahead and leave a rating somewhere. If you didn't enjoy us, keep it to yourself.
If you don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything at all. That's what my mom always said.
Yeah, my mom didn't say that, but I agree with it.
Just still do it. It doesn't matter.
And then make sure you hit that subscribe button. This was another episode of Let Me Ask You This via Two Travel Dads Podcast. Have a great day. We'll talk to you later.
Bye.
Two Travel Dads Podcast is created by Rob and Chris Taylor in St. Augustine, Florida. We'd love to answer your questions here on the podcast, providing both our experience and stories to share our own insights into whatever you're wondering about. Visit twotraveldads.com/podcast-episodes to leave your questions and to check out past episodes and show notes. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and have an awesome day.